Okay, so it's time to set up the development environment. And if you've taken my Jira Cloud App Development with Connect course, then you will know how easy it is to set up Atlas Connect, Atlas Connect Express on a Ubuntu machine, because the instructions were essentially just 3 lines. Now, it's not that simple with Forge, and I put that down to the fact that Forge is still quite new and doesn't work across a wide range of versions of Node.js. What I've found is that Forge really only works with the latest version of Node, which is 16.10 at the moment. I wouldn't recommend that you try with the current LTS release, which is 14 something, because I couldn't get it to work with the current release of Forge. So that's the first thing. The other thing that's worth mentioning here is that Forge requires Docker. And if you're on a Windows PC and you use VirtualBox, VMware, or other virtualization software, then you need to know that Docker will make those stop working. Your virtual machines will stop working. You're much better off creating a Ubuntu virtual machine and follow the instructions for Ubuntu if you're a VirtualBox user. So I wouldn't recommend that you directly install on a Windows 10 machine if you also use VirtualBox and VMware. Just to be clear, again, there will be instructions in a document that you can download after this module that show you how to install on Ubuntu, how to install on Apple Mac, or on Windows 10, with a big warning for Windows 10, of course. So those instructions will be available as well. But what I'll do here is I'll demonstrate the setup on Ubuntu. So the first thing we need, as I said, is Docker. And we can literally just install that from the Ubuntu repository. So I'll just say sudo apt-get install docker.io. And we install that, which shouldn't take too long. Now, the next one is with Docker. You can Google this on the internet, and there's instructions on docker.org as well. But with Docker, in order to be able to run Docker containers as a non-root user, you have to add the user to the Docker group, and that's the thing we're going to do next. So I'm going to say sudo user mod. I use $user, it'll be filled in with my current username, --groups Docker. And what we're going to do is we're going to append this to my standard groups. Now, in theory, that should mean that I have the group Docker. Now, the funny thing is, you can't actually see the groups until this user has logged in freshly again. And there's a couple of things I can do. I could just log out from here, but to be honest, the best way to do this, to make sure it just works, is to just reboot your Ubuntu machine. So that will be my recommendation at this point. There are other ways of doing it. There are a few workarounds that you can follow. But to be honest, that is the simplest and best way, because then you just know that you've got the group Docker in your arsenal. So what I'll do is I'll just pause this recording for a little second and reboot my machine, and then we'll carry on. Okay, excellent. So I've now rebooted the machine. And if I say groups again, you can now see that I'm now a member of the Docker group. What I like to do at this point is to actually prove that Docker is working for the current user, because we're going to need it for Forge. So the easiest way to do that is just to say docker run hello world, and it's now downloading the hello world image, and it doesn't do an awful lot other than just say hello from Docker. So Docker is working, which is good. Now, in the next step, we're going to need curl. So I'll install curl as well. Right, and now I recommend that you go to node source. because node source has ready-made packages for Ubuntu. So you can just use node source to basically just use the package manager to install the latest version of Node.js, even though it didn't come with your Ubuntu distribution. So what I'll do is I'll go to node source. So what I've just done here is I've just searched for node source Ubuntu, and as you can see, here's the Ubuntu distribution, and it tells you on this page what to do to install it. What we want to do is we want to install the latest version. And as I said, all of these instructions are also in the document that you get afterwards, so you don't need to write any of this down. So what we want to do here is we want to follow the instructions for Node.js 16. So what I'll do is, using Ubuntu, I'll do this curl command, copy that across. And what it's now doing is it's installing the references to the node source repositories, which then means that I can just install Node.js directly with the package manager. So apt-get install -y Node.js. But the difference is, if I'd done that before without doing the other step first, I would have had quite an old version of Node.js. But now I have node ---- version, I have v16.10, which is what I wanted. Perfect. So that's good. And now the final step is sudo npm install -g. We want it globally installed for everybody, not just installed like locally in this current directory. So -g @forge CLI. This will take a little minute. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run forge ---- version to ensure that Forge is installed. Right, perfect timing. Forge ---- version. And there we are, 202. Perfect. Development environment is set up. What we want to do now is we want to just build a really little sample app to sort of, demonstrate that Forge is working, but also, start this very first step of building our very first Hello World style app. But before we can do that, we need to sign up for a development environment. If you've already done that, you can skip the next module. If you haven't got a Jira development instance yet, I'll show you how to sign up for one of those. And then we can build our first app and deploy it in that development instance. So head over to the next module where we'll sign up for the development instance.